In this video, we're going to talk about Carlos II, the most unfortunate king of the Spanish Habsburgs. He was so ill that he was expected to die young, but miraculously survived into adulthood. He eventually married the beautiful Marie Louise, who had captivated the French court. What was their marriage like? But first, please like and subscribe to continue receiving the histories behind famous art. Spain enjoyed its influence over the entire Europe in the 16th century, but its power was already in decline before Carlos II ascended to the throne. The Catholic Church in Spain is often cited as a major cause of this decline, with the adverse effects of the Inquisition being particularly severe. By this time, the Inquisition outlived its original purpose in Spain, and was turned into a political tool. People's lives were monitored by the Church. Catholic Church had also driven the Jews out of Spain. The Church was deeply intertwined with everyday life, and it even interfered in royal ceremonies and entertainments. As a result, life in Spanish court was restrictive and stifling. This was very different from the atmosphere in Vienna, even though Austria was also ruled by Habsburgs. Empress Margarita was amazed by the grandeur and joy of the royal celebrations and court entertainment in Vienna when she got married. This was an eye-opening experience from the monastic and oppressive atmosphere of the Spanish court. In Vienna, she felt a newfound sense of freedom and creativity. Even more so for Paris. Paris was known for its lively entertainment and parties, to the point of being promiscuous. The French royal court under Louis XIV was the epitome of extravagance and worldly pleasures. The problem was that, unlike Margarita, this bride was coming from the world of excesses to the strict and oppressive Madrid. It was like sending a social butterfly into a convent. On August 30th, 1679, Marie Louise had a proxy wedding at Fontainebleau Palace. The day before, the official engagement was held, and the crown prince, who was secretly involved with Marie Louise, had to attend it. As Marie Louise entered with her long dress carried by attendants, she was looking at the crown prince standing opposite Louis XIV. The crown prince couldn't even bear to meet her eyes. After a few days of celebration following the proxy wedding, on September 20th, Marie Louise finally departed for Spain. During the long journey, she remained mostly silent. She felt like a calf being led to the slaughterhouse. She cried in her carriage when she felt overwhelmed with emotion. On her journey from Paris to Madrid, her entourage had to cross the Pyrenees, and there were sections where she had to get out of the carriage and travel on horseback. These moments provided brief respites for her otherwise grim journey. But what about Carlos, who was eagerly awaiting his bride? Carlos was thrilled and excited. He had heard about Marie Louise from the French ambassador in Spain and other envoys from France, who all praised her beauty, brightness, and sweetness. A life-size portrait of Marie Louise hung in his room, and he fell more in love with her each day as he gazed at it. He wondered how such an attractive woman could exist, and felt incredibly fortunate to marry her. Carlos, who is usually quiet and shy, seemed suddenly brimming with energy and excitement he had never shown before. You might say, the raging hormones were doing something. When Carlos heard that his bride had departed for Spain, he couldn't just sit and wait. He decided to meet her before she reached the border. Despite everyone's objections, he set off north in a carriage. The court was thrown into chaos. Eventually, he was persuaded not to go all the way to the French border, but to meet her in Burgos instead, where there was a palace and a large cathedral where they could hold proper ceremonies. Of course, this meant the whole royal family, including his mother Mariana, had to go to Burgos, shaking their heads at Carlos's determination. Marie Louise was very surprised to hear that her husband, Carlos, was coming all the way to meet her. In Paris, she had heard that he was almost bedridden most of the time, but now, he was traveling a long distance to meet her. She was touched, and the two began exchanging letters, which was awkward at first, became increasingly heartfelt. This correspondence allowed them to develop a fondness for each other before they met in person. When Carlos arrived in Burgos, Marie Louise had not arrived there yet. Eager to meet his bride, Carlos set off again, despite everyone's objections. The rest of his entourage had to follow him, again. Marie Louise's entourage, meanwhile, was nearing Burgos, and the two groups met in the small town of Quintanapala, just north of Burgos. Fortunately, there was a large cathedral where they could have the wedding ceremony. That day, Marie Louise wore a French-style dress adorned with many gems, and she appeared even more beautiful in person than in her portrait. When they finally met, Marie Louise knelt to kiss the king's hand, but Carlos hastily pulled her up. He looked like a young boy in love, who didn't know what to do before his beloved. For Marie Louise, she had grown fond of the sweet and caring young man through the letters. Observing Carlos, she had mixed feelings. Although his appearance wasn't perfect, Carlos was not the monster she had imagined from the stories. He was also the King of Spain, after all. With a complex mix of emotions, Marie Louise treated Carlos as politely and affectionately as possible. Carlos's mother, Mariana, was observing from the side, and she quietly breathed a sigh of relief. She was worrying about what might happen to Carlos if Marie Louise expressed dislike upon meeting him for the first time. But Marie Louise seemed to be as kind and gentle as the rumors suggested. During the journey back to Madrid, Mariana also had the chance to talk with Marie Louise at length. Through these conversations, she got to know her better and felt at ease. Marie Louise was just an amiable and cheerful young girl who had no interest in politics or power plays. Mariana had been worried that the Spanish court would come under the French influence if Marie Louise played her cards right. So Mariana felt relieved when Marie Louise showed no interest in politics. However, there was something Mariana did not know about Marie Louise's true feelings. Marie Louise never intended to settle permanently in Spain. She secretly harbored a desire to return to France, despite her uncle, Louis XIV, preventing her from doing so. She believed that she could return to France if Carlos died and she became a widow, which she anticipated would happen soon enough, given his poor health. The thought of engaging in political struggles at Spanish court was abhorrent to her. She despised complicated problems, and found the idea of playing politics intolerable. Those things are of interest only to people, like Mariana, who actually wants to stay in the country and rule it. And Marie Louise desperately wanted to return to France. The thought of her husband's death, although it was a tragic and grim prospect, was like the light at the end of a tunnel. So, seeing Carlos in apparent health, riding out to greet her, gave Marie Louise mixed feelings. She might have thought, my hope for swift return to Paris was just a dream. But she soon realized that Carlos's bout of good health at their wedding was a rare exception. He periodically suffered epileptic seizures, but to everyone's relief and Marie Louise's secret dismay, Carlos proved remarkably resilient, surviving against all odds. For Marie Louise, their marriage became a prolonged ordeal of hope and despair. Every time Carlos fell ill, Marie Louise secretly hoped that, this time, finally she can return to France, and then, when he recovered, she felt disappointed, yet relieved, and guilty, all at the same time. So what happens to this unfortunate young queen, who secretly hoped for the day her husband would finally die? Would she be able to return to France? In our next video, we will find out more about the marriage between Carlos and Marie Louise. So please like and subscribe to find out more. It really helps a small channel like us.